What's up, y'all? So, in this one gonna be interesting. So, I'm gonna talk about most masculine, my personality types, like most naturally masculine, you know, types. 16, I'm gonna rank them on the tier list. Now, I don't want to offend some people. Like, if you a male and yours happens to go low, it doesn't really matter like that. Um, it's more so in general, but like you as an individual, if you want to be more masculine, you will always become more masculine as a guy. You know what I mean? Like, for your other identities to become more masculine. Some of it's a little more inclined to be a masculine than others. That's it. A lot of it had to do with like, how much testosterone you got in your body too. Some people got a little testosterone. That's just genetics. You know what I'm saying? However, I will say though, behaviors do affect your testosterone a little. Like, let's say you start acting more masculine, you would also, there's study that showed that you would also become more like your testosterone would also raise depending on some of your behaviors. Like, it's kind of like linked a little bit, but anyways, we're gonna talk about according to my really like types in general, who are the most masculine ones. Now I'm gonna go about feminine too later, but I don't know. I want that's a good idea to do. But anyways, let's get started. So the first type, ENFJ. So ENFJs, like I know like a lot of people might think ENFJs, well, I don't even say a lot of people. I would say also like initially, I kind of thought ENFJ would rank kind of low on this, but some male ENFJs can be kind of masculine as far as in a spiritual sense. They might look at it more of a spiritual sense, like when you talk about masculinity versus femininity. Uh, so they can be a little bit more masculine with what initially I would have put them. But if you want to talk about masculine versus, well, we just talking about masculinity, but I want to talk. Well, we're talking about like masculinity, how masculine the ENFJ is. I want to say, that's kind of hard. I want to say either C or B, but uh, yeah, C or B. Now when it comes to the ESP, that's what we on now. ESPs. I'm gonna be honest with you. ESPs can be seen as a little more on the feminine side. Naturally, um, they're not necessarily, you would consider them necessarily rough around the edges. Um, they're kind of like, when you talk about the energy of an ENFP, their energy is, like, when I look at them, the energy that comes off of them for me is like, they're like soft and squishy. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, that's kind of what the energy I get from ENFPs. But I'll say it could be very feminine naturally, but when we talk about masculine, not always. However, like I said, it could be word on. They're not the most feminine though. I mean, they're not the least masculine though necessarily. They go with the D or C tier, honestly. But I'm a little bit on the fence about this one. I'm gonna say the D right now. Maybe the bottom D tier. Um, we'll see if I change my mind later. ECTs. Now, ECTs are pretty masculine. I say in a way. Well, and it also is like being a leader. That's the big part of being masculine. Um, they like being in charge of people and stuff like that. Now that's a little bit overrated. I feel like we talk about masculinity. I feel like, I mean, it's good. Like, yeah, it's pretty masculine to want to be in charge, but like forcing yourself to be in charge, it was not necessarily the most masculine. They seem like on the surface, but I feel like for you masculine, you should naturally just have that presence where people want to follow you without you trying to make people follow you. I'm not saying all ACT do that necessarily, but a lot of them think it is natural. I'm just saying that it doesn't necessarily make them the most masculine, necessarily. I like my other is when it comes to ENTJs, they are pretty masculine, but um, there's other aspects of their lives where they're not as masculine. They can kind of bring them down. I'll say about A tier. If it was those other areas in life, oops, yeah, I won't put it a little higher, but I say A tier. ENTPs, really hard to say they're ENTPs. I will say they lean more towards masculine than they would like feminine for sure. Oh, they're not like the most masculine. The thing that will maybe the most masculine will be their introvert thinking. Like, if we being honest, introvert thinking is a pretty masculine function just by its nature. Uh, so I wanted to put them B tier, which is cool. ESFJ, not surprisingly, ESFJs, their fellas, they can be pretty masculine too. Thing about that is, uh, when they got down the extrovert feeling, they are thinking about what's appropriate, what fits in with whatever group dynamic they try to fit into. Now, yeah, extrovert sensitive, they're thinking about traditionally what does it mean to be masculine. So if they are focused on wanting to be masculine, the thing is, either they will want to be more masculine because they're fearless. Being that they're fearless, they want to be able to use their feeling function without it looking feminine. So they will find ways to to express themselves, but still look masculine. They are, you know what I'm saying? So they are actually quite masculine. I almost want to put them S tier. I think they did go top A tier, honestly. Um, Only because some things that hold the ESFJ that could be a more masculine is ESFJ is kind of like the gossip. I feel like gossiping is kind of a feminine thing because masculine dudes don't really gossip. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, moving on. ESFJ, ESFP, ESPs, ESP are just pretty masculine people. Uh, whether they're, but I feel like when you talk about masculinity and ESFP, it's more about the sex appeal aspect of masculinity. They map that down to a T. I wouldn't really consider them feminine. You know, they're highly emotional people and things like that. They're actually not very feminine. However, like they're up there in some masculine. They almost like I'll say A series for sure. They're pretty masculine. Uh pretty I don't want to say S tier way, but like I don't think they're quite S tier necessarily. Um ESTJ. Um ESTJ is they're pretty masculine. Um they kinda they like telling people what to do. That's not always masculinity. Like, you know, masculinity, you're like, you would actually tell you what to do, but it's like, you try to force it and that's not good. But, even with that being said, I say ESCJs. Hmm, that's a tough one. I'm gonna say they will go bomb as chair. Uh, they go bomb as chair, honestly. Just now, okay, next we got ECPs. ECPs is quite masculine. Um, now our list I feel like hopefully I'm not a spoiler nothing. I don't think it was mad, but I think a list later talking about toughness. ETPs can go over there pretty high. So they might be number one almost. All of their part well, I'll put them pretty high. But that's other important aspect to being masculine, but ETPs are quite masculine. Um no, yeah, they're pretty masculine. I say they probably go S tier. Well, um maybe like I say maybe on the low end of the S tier, but because there are some things that could hold him back from being more masculine, but for the most part, they're pretty masculine. INFJs, um, I will say INFJ not necessarily seen as the most masculine types. Um, I'm trying to think. They're quite emotional, deeply emotional people. Now, who I put them quite a D tier, I'll put it a C tier. You talking about being most masculine. Um, I mean, yeah, most masculine. They're not necessarily, they don't always do the typical things you think of as far as masculinity. However, they're not like quite a D tier necessarily. IPs, now there's this unfortunate stereotype of IPs where uh people would see IPs as wimpy. Now, it's not really the first stereotype because there are quite a lot of INFPs who can actually go like look quite sturdy and strong, like as far as their body type. how it come off. How in general, the way we stereotype doesn't make a little bit of sense. I'm gonna be honest with you. Uh, INFPs can be kind of wimpy, in a lot of cases, and that I says they're both masculine. I put them beat there, honestly. Um, the ENFP is a little more masculine than the INFP though. So that was ICCA. ICCAs very logical people, very critical people too. Now when it comes to masculinity, they're masculine, but that type of masculinity, I was saying more intellectual sort of masculinity. Uh, yeah, you talk about a third people who, let's see, there are some people. If I say this an insult, but there are some people who embrace being a nerd. The kind of people that would embrace being a nerd, but they were like cooler, like to that thing. ISTPs, I want to say that, but B, they are more masculine than the ENTP. I don't want to say A. I'm very close to putting them. We're trying to think. ENTP are a little bit more masculine than the INTJs. Uh, I say they high with each other right now. Potentially A. INTPs, INTPs are very logical, of course. Very rational. Now, INTPs can be quite masculine too. They'll all be seen as masculine simply because they're not prioritizing their feelings. Um, I do want to compare it to my type. ISTPs are more romantic in art than ISTPs are. A little more sentimental. The thing that makes them more sentimental and a little more like, let's say in a relationship, they will come off a little more romantic in a way, is their tertiary bird sensing. Because a tertiary is bird sensing, tertiary sensing value, sentimental value. So that adds that to the we've talked masculinity. On the fence of done as a spark sort of either A or B, but I would say they be honestly B fits though. Yeah, B fits pretty solid. So ISFJs kind of like these SFJ, they can be they can come off pretty masculine in a lot of ways. Um, yeah, ISFJs are actually quite nasty. They're the type that actually will, when you talk about masculinity coming out them very strongly, you will notice their masculinity like right away. We want to talk about that all the time. A lot of people actually do not know this though, because they're failures. People assume, but this actually is how when you talk about a masculine ISFJ, people are always mistaken the masculine ISFJ for ISTP. A lot of people do this still. Whether you're talking about fictional characters or people in real life, people do this all the time. They always think ISFJ or masculine ISFJ, they all mistaken them for a thinker type. Because they're very masculine, it's not like what people would think. Like, it's very similar when I said about ESFJ, where they think they will be understanding like traditional masculinity because of the introverted sensing, like SIs, so they can understand things like that, how to be a traditionally masculine dude. And then their extroverted fellas think about how the things they do affect people, so they're thinking about how it's gonna fit in with society. Uh, Very good at that. They're one of the most masculine types. I won't have to put them to. They don't get enough credit for this, but yeah. But another thing about they kind of get the top masculine. They give you always more like Boy Scout, do gooder type masculinity. Like I think about Captain America's Superman as eyes of J. Luke Cage, that's eyes of J. A lot of people. I saw this whole like when I poll, I saw this like article one time was talking about that Luke Cage, the ESTP and stuff like that. Luke Cage is not no ESTP. That's just a bad timing. I'm even gonna say that right now. Um, but yeah, happens all the time. But anyways, ISFP. ISFPs, very similar to the ESFP as far as masculinity. They mastered the sensitive side of it very well. Like you talk about masculinity. I won't call ISFPs feminine necessarily, even though they're fillers. Something about the extroverted sensing can make them masculine still. Um, Very soft. They're very soft spoken, but it's not hard being soft spoken, of course. I'm soft spoken, you know what I'm saying? But ISFPs, Um, they definitely come off masculine. I want to say like a tier. Yeah, bottom of a tier. Now let me do this right a little bit. ENTJs can go up. They're more masculine than ESFJs. And I say that in masculine than ESFP a little bit. So yeah, I can move that around a little bit. Let me get this. Look through this really quick. Everything else good. Okay. ISTJ. Of course, you can see ISTJs as masculine. Um, they're kind of like cookie cutter. Uh, people go by the book. But they're masculine people in general. Um, I want to say OS tier, pretty much. I mean, not really much I can say about that, right? It's just like it's time to get there. My now most people will see as quite masculine, say because of the way we are, that we just don't really. Most of the time, people think of masculinity and talk about uh, unemotional, logical. Like we kind of fit that pretty well. We don't really make decisions based off of emotions, and we don't always like to think about it, like base a lot of things on our emotions in general. Which I mean, we'll lift if we when we're not publishing mode, we'll lift logic. You know what I'm saying? Not always that simple, but I'd say we are pretty masculine. Is the way we move and like the just in general, like even the women, high ISTP women call masculine. A lot of times, ISTP women, this is just the nature of ISTP. It makes it really hard for them to learn how to become feminine until they get older. Uh, so it's a big struggle. But that just shows how acting my type is. I mean, we go there. Um, let's see what's going on. Okay, my mouse ain't that funny. Anyway, yeah, go ahead. We're on Mac and the ETP for sure. A little bit there, but I just see you can go right behind us, and yeah, I mean, I try to put that all a little bit of you. I think this is okay as far as the list, but anyways, I think as it for right now, that's just been where I put it right now. Anyways, stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching.